If you're new to the channel, we have a lot of great content here, but this is not a piece of content that I recommend you watch. And that's because today's more about getting to know me if you've been following me for a while. A lot of people have been asking questions that I don't get back to as well as I should. So starting today, I'm going to try to incorporate a weekly practice, which is just Q&A with everyone following, all of the YouTube comments we're getting that have questions, all of the Instagram Q&As that we do that I haven't answered. Trying to get back to as many of those every week as possible. So in short, if you're new and you haven't seen us before, go to the YouTube page. I promise there's probably something there that can help you in business. And if you're not new and you want to get to know me a little bit more, then today, get some popcorn. It might be a little bit of a longer video. I don't have too much of an agenda. I told the team specifically raw-ish edit, raw-ish environment, and then realistically just raw answers to a Q&A. I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into it. Number one, how to balance wanting to work hard and pleasing your boss without being overstepped. That's a great question. Number one, first thing that comes to my mind is the word expectation. So overstepped means overstepping a line, and that line is the expectation that you have and your boss has in the relationship. I said no real animations and B-roll today and such, so I'm going to try to draw this out with my hands. If you think about every relationship having expectations, those expectations are either set and agreed on by both parties, and if they're not, then they're usually going to be two different expectations, two different lines that both parties have, meaning realistically you have employer, employee. Employee sets an expectation of what they think the role is supposed to be and what they should be doing every day for work, and then the employer has a different expectation because there was no expectation set, right, between the two. So realistically, if you and your employer have a conversation about this is what I expect every single day, blah, 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 an expectation conversation, now you guys can be in the middle. At this point, if they overstep, you can say, hey, we had a conversation about this line, this expectation, and you're asking for more than that now. If you want me to do more, then we can have a talk about you, of course, compensating for more, what I need to do, etc. Realistically, that's overstepping the line. In most cases, what I have found, both being an employee for different businesses and of course being an employer, is a lot of people suck at having that expectation conversation. A lot of people just don't do it, especially with smaller businesses. A lot of employers don't even recognize how important it is to have that conversation. As an employee, you can actually request that conversation. So if you want to work hard, that's great. One of the things that will happen is if you work hard without setting an expectation, then your hard work will go as, now I don't want to say unnoticed, but almost become the bare minimum. Example given is if I don't have an expectation conversation with an employee and they work their asses off, that to me kind of becomes the bare minimum expectation or standard that I can expect that person to do. And so if I want to give them more, if I want to ask for more, every employee/employer relationship has to have a conversation about expectations. Do they care if you work inside of the office or outside of the office? Can you go on vacation and still work in a way of like, traveling, but still having your computer? There are so many different things that you want to set at the very beginning of the relationship as clear expectations so that no party, you or them, it's a safety for both of you, can overstep the expectation set. That all said, if you don't have that conversation, an expectations conversation, expectations are still set, but they're set differently. I think this is something a lot of people miss. They don't set expectations, whether it's in a personal relationship with a friend, a romantic relationship, an employer-employee relationship. They think that because they didn't set expectations, that expectations aren't there, but they are. It just becomes the work in which you do becomes the new expectation. So I want you to think about it for a second. If you get into a romantic relationship with somebody and maybe the week that you start dating and maybe you're really smitten for 3 or 4 days, you go on different dates with her, but that's like an anomaly. You don't normally have that amount of time. And that one week that you met her where you were really trying to get to know her, you avoided friends or you pushed off friends and hanging out with friends. You probably slacked a little bit with work. You gave her more time than you normally can. The problem is that you set the expectation that 3 or 4 days a week is kind of the baseline of what you're capable of doing. And so if you go under that, then you're not living up to the expectation that you set through action. And so in a really good relationship, what you'll see is someone saying, this is how much time I can give to the relationship. There will be weeks and months where that's more. There will be weeks and months where that's less. And we'll talk about that as it comes. There's only so much time that can commit. It's the same thing with an employer conversation. And in this case, the employer didn't have a conversation about what was exactly expected from you. And so you just started working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. Instead of working 40 hours a week at that company like everyone else did, you worked 50, 60, you worked more. And in that you produced more. That production increase or your ability to produce more actually becomes the standard of what the employer expects for you or from you at that point. And so you're setting an expectation just like you did in the romantic relationship of more than you can actually afford to give on long notes. And so any less than that, and now the employer thinks that you're slacking, or in this case, the romantic relationship, that your girlfriend would think that you're not as interested. Any more than that, now you're spread thin. You can't really sustain that for long term. And so one of the most important things that I would say is like, I love working hard and I recommend everyone works hard. I think we're meant to work hard. But at the same time, the way you avoid being overstepped is setting clear expectations and then holding firm on those expectations unless something else about the relationship changes. Example given, if you're going to expect more, then I would expect more in return, whether that's compensation, days off, etc. Advice to young entrepreneurs starting content without having a full content team. Where should I focus to move the needle? Controversial take on this, which is that I don't believe young entrepreneurs should be starting in content. And when I say young, I personally am taking that as like someone young in their entrepreneurial journey, not necessarily young in age, but you can take that however you will. But I personally think that if you're just starting an entrepreneurship, you can make the argument of kind of having a vlog of people to follow your journey. I just don't think content's a necessary tool for you to get going. And so the second question you said is, where should I focus to move the needle? If you're first starting in business, content will not help you move the needle. I can pretty firmly say that. And that's because realistically, the only way that content will help you move the needle is when you can share authority or build trust on helping people achieve a certain outcome. And if you're new to entrepreneurship, there's not much that you can say with authority. There's not much that you can do to help people get to a certain outcome. I have a different perspective on content than most people do, which is that I don't believe most people should be in content. I don't think that most entrepreneurs recognize how content can be as malicious to their brand as it can be beneficial. So to precede all this, I'll say that there are really two types of content in the business world. Number one is like your vlog style content, follow me on my journey of growing a business. Number two would be your authority-based coaching, lessons, teaching kind of content. And if you looked at my channel, a majority of it would be the teaching. And if you looked at Iman circa 2016, a majority of that would be the vlogging style kind of content. So, and in those two types, the kind of journalistic versus teaching types of content, the only people that should be teaching are people that have authority in the subject that they're teaching on. Meaning, example given, I don't think anyone can debate whether or not Alex Hormozi has experience talking about certain topics in business that he talks on. I don't really think anyone can make any content against Alex Becker talking about how to grow a business and exit a business. I don't think people could really negate my content because I only talk on things that I personally have experience on. Versus a lot of people who are on YouTube trying to teach on things that they've never really done themselves, trying to teach to a higher maturity audience than they are personally. I think most people don't have authority to make content on what they make content about. Meaning you have guys who are making $10,000 a month trying to make content on how to grow a business to $100,000 a month. You have guys making $4,000 a month trying to make content on how to get to $10,000 a month. You have guys who have never ran large teams talking about hiring. I'm obviously talking about this from the business perspective. The only way that I think realistically you can be new to entrepreneurship but still make some kind of coaching/teaching content is if you're coaching on a certain subject that you as an entrepreneur haven't done, but in general in your career you have. So example given, let's say you were a software developer. You started creating content on how to get into a good school to be a software dev, on how to apply to different software jobs, on how to look at different comp structures for software jobs, on how to succeed in software specific kind of videos. And then on the back end, you drive some kind of coaching program with software dev. I think that is a great way to move the needle if you're first starting in entrepreneurship, but you have a ton of experience with that career. Otherwise, a lot of people see what Alex Hormozi does, see what Iman does, and they try to copy that same kind of style. And I just think it comes off as so inauthentic. I think it comes off as not knowing what you're talking about. And I think anyone who watches that would actually watch that and think this guy or girl has no idea what they're saying. And because of that, I actually want to stay away from them in business. I think content can be as malicious as it can be helpful to your brand. Versus the journalistic style, same thing, it can help and hurt. But I do think realistically having some kind of journalistic thing that you can look back on, that's how my content first started this year. I actually got a funny text. I'll read this actually. I've gotten a lot of texts about my YouTube lately, and they've all been really, really kind, good, nice texts. Been watching all of your YouTube videos. Who would have known the guy who swore he'd never record content makes really good content? LOL. If you don't know, I actually told everyone for the last 3 years I would not be on YouTube. And the reason I got on YouTube is I started at the beginning of this year. I still have something called Daily Bread. I'm going to CTA this really quick. If you want to see more about what I do in business, if you want more insightful business help, if you want to see just in general what it looks like to build an 8-figure portfolio, then go to dailybread.co if you want to put that on the screen, Ollie. I have a private school group. The first 7 days are on me. And in that group, I talk about everything I'm doing every single day. It's a daily video. They're uncut. They're just me in front of my computer in my workstation. No editing. I can go more into the boring stuff than I can on YouTube because I don't need to worry about audience retention and such. I think a lot of people would benefit. If you're watching these videos, I think you would probably like it. Everyone in there, for the most part, tends to like it. I say tends to like it because I'm trying to be modest here, but I genuinely think that they are helpful. And we're going to start adding some extra cool stuff in there too. Example given, one of the cool things that we just started doing are YouTube reviews. And so every YouTube video I drop, I can't go as deep into the information that I would like to talk about because, again, people don't like boring stuff at the end of the day. The boring stuff is what helps you grow. People on YouTube don't want that boring stuff, even though they think they do. And so I started doing YouTube reviews where I go over the boring stuff I can't share on YouTube as I watch my own YouTube videos. It's all like a Loom review process that you get access to in Daily Bread. It's less than $1 a day. So anyway, I think you would enjoy it. I'm going to go back to saying that the reason I got into YouTube was I had Daily Bread before for myself. And then I started letting people get into it for $1 a day. And I had this journal thing that I would just talk to myself on that some people had access to. And I realized, as I started putting more and more and more effort into it, that I should just put this stuff on YouTube. I didn't plan on getting into YouTube. So the journalistic side, the reason I'm saying this is the journalistic side is more for you than it is for other people. And eventually it can become for other people, like it did for Iman, like it did for me, saying that we're on the same playing field. I know we're not, obviously. But the reason I'm saying this is because at the end of the day, if you want to create content for the sake of moving the needle and you're first getting into entrepreneurship, the only way that you can move the needle with content is by speaking on something that you have authority on. If you don't have authority, don't make content on it. If you're creating a marketing agency and you don't have authority for the niche that you're talking to, then you can create journalistic stuff, but that's going to be for something down the road. It's not going to be for helping you move the needle with your agency. My views on content are, number one, a lot of people would say hypocritical because here I am creating content. I would argue that I have authority in what I'm talking about. Number two is that everyone sees Alex Hormozi saying create content. I'm saying this all to say, realistically, if you want to create content for your own benefit, you can journal it. That's great. If you want to create content for moving the needle, it has to be something you have authority on. And a lot of young entrepreneurs, meaning older entrepreneurs that are starting their journey or younger entrepreneurs that are starting their journey, you just have to recognize you might not have authority on what you're trying to create as a business model. And if you don't, that's great. My first business was helping real estate agents. And one of the reasons that I wanted to get out of that after a year and some change was because I recognized I wanted to create content and I couldn't create content for that demographic because I didn't know anything about real estate. I knew enough about real estate to have good sales conversations, but I didn't know enough about real estate to really come across as an authority. I didn't have the background to come across as an authority figure like Ryan Serhant or Tom Ferry. I couldn't create content like most people could in that industry because I didn't have the background of being a real estate agent. So I didn't. If I wanted to, and I should have in hindsight, because I'd be so much further in my journey at this point with content, but I could have created journalistic content about what I was doing in the agency world, and then other agency owners probably would have started following it, and that would have been 4 years ago. I would have had better traction come this point. But I could have never, until I sold that agency, got ripped off in the sale, until a lot of stuff happened, I couldn't have created actual content on business like I do now. If you think about the fact that I don't create content for real estate agents, I create content for business owners that help real estate agents or info products or marketing agencies. That's why I can come across with more deep stories and authentic note, because I'm creating on subjects that I have personally failed at, succeeded at, gone through different emotions that I felt throughout the entire time. There's a reason that my YouTube is growing faster, and it's because I'm speaking in a way that empathizes with people that are going through what I went through. And I'm talking about the emotions that I had felt when I went through it. And I'm talking about how I struggled when I was there. And I'm talking about how I got out of it. And in a way that people can recognize, like, that's not bullshit. It's genuinely coming from someone who experienced the pain. And I think most people, when they watch content, they want to watch content with someone who's gone through the thing that they're talking about. This, again, to remind everyone of what I said at the beginning of the video, is me learning how to rant in front of a camera, which is a skill set I haven't practiced. And so I don't know how sensible these answers are, but I hope that someone somewhere is sticking true. I have a list of questions. I think I've only gotten through 2, so I want to get going with this a little faster. Question number 3, what do people most often get wrong about you? If you watch me on YouTube or if you see me on Instagram, I think most people think that I live a more glamorous life than I live. And I think most people think that I'm further in my walk with Christ than I am. So, example given, one of the comments, if you want to put this on the screen, Ollie, that have been sitting with me is from our last video about why I've been having a lack of flow when it comes to content. And a lot of people are saying, specifically this one person said, that it's probably because I'm being called to make more faith-based content. And the reason I'm not creating faith-based content is because when you start creating faith-based content, you are held biblically to a higher standard at the day of judgment, because at that point you are really pastoring, you're preaching. And I don't want to be held to that standard because I have not gone to seminary. I have not gotten a master's degree or bachelor's or PhD in theology. I am still learning heavily. Even the smartest people who have studied the Bible their entire lives are still learning, of course. But when I say this, I'm just trying to say that I don't think realistically that people recognize how flawed I am as a Christian. That's really the thing I try to share, if anything, how flawed I am as a Christian, trying to do this business Christian thing. For people who do know me in person, that are not like close friends of mine, thing that they probably would get wrong about me is how money-centric I am. Meaning when people see someone making money, and people see someone creating content on business, and people see someone wearing nice watches and such, which is one of the reasons I want to get rid of the watches, people would just assume, if they don't know you, that you care more about money than you do. I think the people who really do know me know that I really don't care about money. It's just not by any means something that I talk about or think about. I had a conversation with a really close friend of mine who is worth way more than I am, and he was asking what like my minimum amount that I need to make every month is. And I just said, I really don't even think about it because I don't care anymore. At this point, I know that I'm not ever going to be struggling financially. And I also know that I'm versed enough in business to always make my standards or my minimums to live a life that I want to live. I don't care about money. But I think people who don't know me in person, like that go to my church or that, which is probably something I should think about even more. But people who know me in person but don't know me as a close friend, I think they would probably think I'm more money-centric than I am. I think people that see me online probably think that I am more, I don't want to say more Christian than I am, but more Christ-like, which is Christian, than I am. In the fact that I am so much more sinful than people realize, and so much more flawed. And number 4 is 3 YouTube channels you recommend watching. It's a hard one to answer because it really depends on what you're trying to learn or what you're watching for. The one that I've been watching often, can't believe I'm going to say this because it's a weird one, is Outdoor Boys. I've just been watching a lot of Arctic camping videos. Not even because I want to do it and I don't want to learn about it. I just think they're peaceful and they're cool, and I can put that on in the background and work to it, but it's like calming in a way. But YouTube channel. So in general, if you want to watch, let me pull up my YouTube really quick. You can see very first one that pops up is Outdoor Boys. Outdoor Boys is solid. My algorithm, because of a lot of the R&D that we've been doing, is a little bit messed up, and so you're going to see a lot of weird stuff in this. My example given, I think my dad has access to my YouTube, and he'll watch air traffic control stuff because he was a pilot working on getting his pilot certification back again. I would say, let's bring this down into theology. So one of the things that I'm watching right now is the Bible from 30,000 Feet by Calvary Church, and I think this is an awesome sermon series. Apparently, I searched up Iman's name the other day. I think I just saw that. Amara, if you're ever watching this. Amara, I think I did a check on your stuff the other day, Amara, because I wanted to see, I was working with a client of mine named Celine about female content, which is completely different than male content. And Amara's stuff is awesome. I watched a couple of her podcasts when she first started. Okay, so to fully answer this question, I don't know who a lot of people I'm searching here are, but number 1 is if you want to really learn about storytelling, which is a couple questions I saw were about storytelling and content, I would watch Casey Neistat, specifically the daily vlog that he did for so long. I think he's one of the best storytellers to exist on YouTube. If you want Christian content, the Bible from 30,000 Feet, and John Piper also has a fantastic it's called Look at the Book. If you want really deep Bible study, this is like the deepest Bible study I think you could find. Desiring God, and he has a lot of really good, I think it's called APJ, Asking Pastor John. Really good Q&A sessions. John Piper is fantastic. So John Piper, Calvary Church for the Look at the Bible at 30,000 Feet. If you want my church, that's Citizens Church Annapolis. The sermon quality, as in like what they actually speak on, specifically Joey. If you looked at Joey is probably one of my favorite pastors that I've ever seen in general, whether it's the stuff I've seen on YouTube or, of course, having the blessing of seeing him in person. Joey's a very close friend of mine. Our church's content, Ben, if you ever watch this, Ben's our worship lead, he watches a lot of my YouTube stuff. If you ever watch this, our content sucks as a church. It's awful. It's like this frame, and Ben is someone who helps me a lot with lighting for my stuff and gear and everything like that. Like Ben actually was the one who helped me first a couple years ago buy this microphone when I was still learning about mics and stuff. But we just don't take that same level of perfection with the church content, if you will. So anyway, Citizens Church, the sermon series on this is great. I would just recommend listening to it from an audio perspective, not necessarily watching the videos. That's what I would recommend for 3 channels on theology. From a storytelling perspective, I'd say Casey Neistat is top tier. I can't think of other good ones. If you want really good, boring business content, Cole Gordon is awesome. This is boring content that you will learn from. The kind of stuff that I won't share on YouTube because it's too boring, it kills retention, is the kind of stuff that Alex Hormozi, I was going to say, Cole Gordon does share. Alex Hormozi was number 2. If you want business content, I'm sure you all know who this guy is already. There's no way that you watch my channel and don't know who this guy is, but he's got great business content. I don't really watch a lot of Hormozi anymore. I watched him many, many years ago, and then I think he went a little too broad and too wide and kind of lost my attention, if you will. And then I guess that's theology / faith. Oh, you want to know one more guy? I want to speak specifically to Muslims. What's this? I think his name is Sam. Sam Schumann. If you're a Muslim, number 1, if you're a Muslim, I think your heart's probably in the right place, but I don't think you know who God is. Let me rephrase. I know you don't know who God is. And I don't think that there is someone more versed, more just so biblically intelligent, someone who knows the Quran so well too, as this guy Sam. And I love watching his stuff. Specifically, a lot of the stuff I love to do or talk about is Muslim. I love watching Muslim versus Christian debates, specifically from an evangelistic perspective. And this guy is just he's actually so far beyond me when it comes to biblical and Quran knowledge that it's almost hard for me to get evangelistic notes from him. But I watch this guy all the time. So I'll add one more in there. And hope that gives you enough to answer that question with. Question number 5, 3 people or sources you've learned from or followed closely in the last 2 years. So I just showed you guys my pastor, Joey, who is a very good friend of mine. I've learned a lot from him. He was my friend before he was my pastor. And of course, he's been pastoring the church for 7 years now or so. But Joey is someone I definitely want to put on that list as someone that I've learned from. Iman is someone I've learned greatly from and deeply from. I know Iman gets a lot of credit and flack on YouTube, and a lot of people who have watched my YouTube videos will comment about Iman in some kind of negative light. I don't understand why. I can truly say Iman's one of the most ethical, honorable guys I know in business. He does things really well and really right, and in ways that I learned from a lot in the last couple of years. And so a lot of love and a lot of respect from Iman. I learned a lot about just so many different things like fashion from Iman. He probably actually would never wear this, so I shouldn't say fashion as I pull this, but learned a lot about fashion from Iman. A lot of life structuring I learned from Iman, and overall so much of the stuff that I learned in business was from the vehicle that he gave me the ability to run for so many years. And I learned a lot about business from that. I don't want to say I learned about business directly from Iman. There's a lot I did learn directly from Iman, like example given offers and such. There were some moments I can still depict vividly of me thinking and realizing like, wow, this guy, sometimes the content, because the content is simple content that he creates, makes you think like, oh, does he still have it? And then there were moments where I remember thinking like, this guy is still like leagues above me. So I learned a lot directly from him in business, but I definitely learned a lot indirectly from the vehicle he gave me in business. And then the third guy that I've learned a lot from is a really close friend of mine, mentor of mine named Eric, who has taught me so much about relationships and business and life and overall what it means to be genuinely someone who is a Christian, who stewards cash well, stewards money well, is in a way to help support others and help benefit others in life. And also just in general, without even money, just how to be someone who is so beneficial to the people that he is around. He is such a close friend of mine that every single time I hang out with him, I pull so much, and I'm so inspired to be a better guy. And that's not just for the last 2 years, that's for the last like 6-7 years of life. I'm so blessed to have Eric in my life. So Eric, you don't watch my stuff, but if you ever did, then love you much, bro. Question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. At what age should you become an entrepreneur instead of honing skill sets? I think that is a very ignorant question. I don't know who asked it, but I will say this with love. The question shows that you just don't understand that entrepreneurs are constantly honing skill sets. Number one, there's no when should you become an entrepreneur or should I become it's just some people are meant for it, some people aren't. I generally think that most people, if they're considering it, should do it to see if it's meant for them or not. I think entrepreneurship is this thing that everyone thinks everyone can do, but it's not. Not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. If everyone was an entrepreneur, then the world would kind of not function because you need people who work inside of businesses and you need people who can grow businesses. And because businesses have way more employees than owners, meaning usually one owner to X amount of employees, the ratio pretty much shows not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. I actually was talking to Iman the other day about whether or not we were talking about us having worked together and such, and something that I had been offered recently. And I personally was talking to him about whether or not I was venting almost and asking for his input on whether I am more of an entrepreneur or intrapreneur. I think I can be a very solid entrepreneur, but what Iman showed me with working with him for 2 years is I think I enjoy being an intrapreneur almost more than I do being an entrepreneur at some times. I'm still kind of learning about that. But the reason I'm saying this is because it's not an age that you would become an entrepreneur instead of honing skill sets. You're always honing skill sets. The game is, when do you have enough? The game is growing in skill and then monetizing on that skill, and then growing on skill and monetizing on that skill. And so you just have to play on, when do I have enough of a skill set to monetize it and bank in? Because realistically, if you grew skill sets for 30 years and then banked in, you'd make a lot of money. It's just whether or not you want to wait to make that much money down the road in 30 years, assuming you're constantly growing skills. Most people, of course, start to plateau and fade out, if you will, when it comes to growth. The thing that's coming to mind right now, which I don't want to say because a lot of people will take this the wrong way, is like the CFO of a very, very, very well-known organization once told me, when I worked at the car dealership, he was buying a car for me. He said he personally thinks that everyone should get a new job every 2 years, with a caveat of, if you're in a really good spot that you're constantly being challenged and constantly growing after 2 years, and you're fine, stay there. But most people after 2 years have picked up whatever skill they're going to pick up from the environment / vehicle that they're in. And so after 2 years pop out. So I would say, realistically, if anything, I'm not saying that every 2 years start a business or liquidate on your skill sets. But what I would say is, like, every 2 years, just take an audit. Every year to 2 years, take an audit of whether or not you're still progressing progressing? And if you're not progressing, if you're not gaining new skills, at that point, do you want to liquidate your skill, or do you want to hop over and learn something new or better the skill that you have? I don't know if that answers your question, but that's probably the best I can give now. How to find your path in business, something I'm passionate for instead of just chasing the money. I'm still struggling with how to understand this as a Christian because I didn't personally walk this. When I first started in business, I was kind of in a lull period in my walk with faith. I had gone to church prior to, I got saved, and then a lot of stuff happened in my walk in the church that I'd gone to at the time, and I kind of went through a lull period, which is when I started in business. And so money was the first thing that I care about. It was the only thing I care about. The only piece of content I actually ever saw Iman create before I worked with Iman was an Instagram story someone sent me about his views on college. But in there, he talked about how when he created a business, he started a business before it had a mission and had a culture to it and had a team. It was something that was specifically designed to make money. And I really appreciated him saying that because I think any business owner starts in business to make money. I don't think you can start a business unless you have money and you're creating another business, or unless you have plenty of cash and you're creating a business for the sake of passion. I think realistically, if you're starting a business and you're not set financially for a long, long time, you kind of have to focus on money. I don't think people can have passion projects unless they also have a cash project. And if your cash project is the business, it inherently cannot be a passion project. And so anyway, long story short is how to find your path in business, something I'm passionate about or passionate for instead of just chasing the money. If you need money, then you got to focus on money. You can only create a passion project when you don't need to make money from it. Meaning realistically, passion projects normally don't make you money or lose you money for a certain amount of time. And you can't do that if you're focused on making money. So it kind of just depends on where you're at. Sometimes you do have to have something. You have to mind your own business to have cash flow, to pay your bills, and ideally to create some kind of nest egg and such. And then once you have a large enough nest egg, you can do something that is for your passion. I have a lot of friends who have businesses that create cash, but then also have businesses or NPOs that are for themselves, for their true mission in life, or for whatever they want to do. Even YouTube, for example, I don't know if YouTube will always be like a cash flow focused thing for me versus eventually maybe a passion focused thing. And so anyway, long story short, you don't start in business. You don't find your path in business for the first time without kind of chasing money. I don't want to say chasing money because I don't like the word chasing here, but you have to have something money centric if you need to make money. Making money is not a bad thing. And having money be something you're focused on making is not a bad thing. It's idolizing money that is a bad thing, which is why I don't like the word chasing. If you want more on that, watch the video I made called Why Christians Are Poor. Otherwise, which a lot of people, that's another one I want to make a rebuttal to. A lot of people still, after that video, commented things that just showed a lot of ignorance. Chasing money, I would say, is idolizing money. But having a focus on creating money in a business where you're working, I think it's not, Proverbs talks about how all work is profitable. And I'm kind of miscuing my understanding of that scripture here, because I think realistically that's supposed to show that even the things that like don't feel like they're, I don't want to say only economically profitable, profiting you at the time can make you money down the road. I think that's what the scripture is supposed to show. But what I'm trying to say now is it's not a bad thing to make money. It's not a bad thing to focus on making money. I would say that if anything, one of the people here actually like upward asked about Luke 16:8, and it specifically talks about shrewdness or future planning. And that verse specifically talks about planning for the kingdom of God. But the reason I'm saying this is because it's not a bad thing to plan for the future, which, realistically means you have to make money. It's not a bad thing to create a business to do that. I just say it's a bad thing to chase money. And it's also ignorant or bad to think that you can create a passion business that is supposed to fund your life as well. I'd say realistically, any passion business I've ever seen came from someone who was not worried about creating money in their passion business. So hope that helps. How to deal with the lack of interest in business. And I would just say business is not always supposed to be interesting. It's not always supposed to be fun. At the same time, if you're doing something that you're called to be doing, even, I don't know, I feel like I'm very called to be doing what I'm doing. I'm not always super interested in making YouTube videos. I'm not always feeling a flow. And I just have to understand that there's a discipline needed that I need to build toward it. And so Hermosi talks about this with a lot of the businesses he sees clean up in their janitorial businesses or boring businesses. And so at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I'll go back to almost question prior to this, which is that a business which makes money is not always going to be a very interesting, fun business. A business for passion, which is something that could, be toward a good cause, help grow the kingdom of God. There's so many different things. Like at the end of the day, even those businesses will have moments where they're not super interesting. I don't even know if I want to put this question in here at this point. We'll keep it in here, Ollie, but you can see, guys, by no means am I the wisest that has all the answers. That one is one that I could probably think about and meditate on myself. I don't know what number this is. When should I be focused on making money versus learning skills? I think that kind of goes into the one that we talked about earlier with honing skill sets, so I'm going to skip this. How do I know I'm an intrapreneur versus an entrepreneur? I don't think anyone will know until they do both. And realistically, I don't think anyone will ever know for sure. Example given, I again accidentally kind of mentioned this earlier, but I've done both at pretty high levels. I've ran some multi 8-figure companies as an entrepreneur, and I've done reasonably well as an entrepreneur. I think at the end of the day, you have to do both. And even then you still won't know. But there are times in life where less risk, more stability, like an entrepreneur, and less on mind are probably what your life is calling for in the season of life that you need to, the season of life that you might find yourself in. Maybe that's what needs at that point. But at the same time, there are times in life where you can take more risk, where you can give more time, and maybe being an entrepreneur. I don't think it's like a binary, you need to be this or that. I think realistically, it could be based on seasons of life. It also might be based on what you want. So as an entrepreneur, maybe you would be happier as an entrepreneur running a business that does $300,000 a year versus an entrepreneur running a business that does $30 million a year. There's so many stages to this question. Number one is like, a lot of people compare it apple to apple. Like, do I want to be an entrepreneur for a company doing $1 million a year or an entrepreneur for a company doing $1 million a year? And it's not really, it doesn't work that way. At the end of the day, to be like a genuine, true entrepreneur, it has to be a larger business. And at that point, maybe you enjoy, like I did, the game of building massive teams and machines and building with other people versus an entrepreneur. Like an entrepreneur, it can be someone making $30,000, $40,000 a year, but they are their own boss to an extent, outside of their clients is why I say to an extent. There's so many different things to this and variables, season of life, size of business. It's a hard one to answer. I think the best thing I can say is just try both. I have a 9-to-5, but my business is starting to pick up. When should I go all in? As long as you can make 80% of the cash that you're making from your 9-to-5 and live happily, I'd say once you do 3 or 4 months of consistent cash from your business that almost replaces your 9-to-5 income, then you can go all in, because 3 or 4 months in, like of consistent cash, don't have one good month and then go all in because you might have a bad month after. But based on the type of business you have, based on like how long-term the clients are, and slightly different factors like how many new clients you get every month, how many client drop-offs every month or churns, realistically, you just want to make sure that you have a little bit of stability in the company before you go all in. But I would say like 80% of your full-time income, take the run, because at that point, it's not going to take, if you have another 40 hours a week to invest in your business, you're easily going to make more than the full-time income you're making there. So how can I become more confident in sales? I'm an introvert, timid, shy, and I stutter. I have a really good friend who has a YouTube channel for sales. His name is Hunter Savoy, and his whole methodology is like the introverted sales rep or something along the lines of that. And so I would go check out his YouTube. I think a lot of good sales reps are more introverted than extroverted. So I don't think, if anything, like a lot of people use labels as an excuse. And so saying you're an introvert as an excuse, you can say I'm an introvert as a powerful thing, or as an excuse as to why you wouldn't do well. And so I'd say like, number one is you're using the word introvert here as an excuse. I'm an introvert. So how do I get confident in sales if I'm an introvert? And I'd say the way I would say is like, I'm an introvert, so I'm actually better on sales calls because I'm not overly talking on a call. Being timid, being shy, those are very easy things to conquer. The stutter, I've never personally combated a stutter, and so I think if anything, just Google how to get over a stutter, YouTube how to get over it. And I don't know much about stutters. If I had to take a guess, realistically, there are probably things you can do to get better at it. Whether or not you can get rid of a full stutter, I'm not a linguist. I wouldn't know. I don't even know if a linguist is the right term to use there. But I know that there are a lot of people who are specifically focused on helping people get rid of stutters, and I know there are a lot of people who are focused on getting people who are timid and shy to be better at sales. And so I would go check out Hunter Savoy. I have another friend named Alex Speck. You could go check out his stuff on YouTube as well. By no means is being introverted, timid, shy, or having a stutter, by no means are any of those things that could keep you from doing well in sales. Next question, how do I share my faith with friends that I love but just aren't Christian? And when people are around you, make it impossible for them to not realize that you're a Christian. I think the first thing is like, if people around you, your best friends, can hang out with you and not recognize that you're Christian, that is something that I had to really swallow at the beginning of this year, which is that I don't think I could have evangelized anyone because no one would have thought I was a Christian if they hung out with me. It felt hypocritical to talk about Christ and to talk about God when I was living as sinfully as I was. I'm still am, of course, extremely sinful, but it was not like I made a deliberate effort to live as a Christian. I just talked, and it's like this slow thing that happened where 5 years ago, I revamped my entire life, and really, I think anyone that hung out with me could have said it was obvious that I was a Christian. And then over the course of a couple of years of lapsing and getting out of the word and not going to church and then living in the world, I started to live very worldly like, and I don't think anyone would have thought I was Christian unless I told them. And I think if I told them, I think it would have been words, but not genuinely who I was. And so number one is that if you want to share it with your friends, you have to be someone who really emphasizes their Christian faith and belief in how they act every single day. There are friends of mine that, like, I know for a fact, you don't have to talk to them to just see that they're Christian and how they live, how they act. Their beings are just people who are trying to be Christ-like, Christian, Christ-like. They don't have to share their faith for people to already have like curiosity provoked. And then from that, realistically, at that point, it just becomes sharing in whatever ways or opportunities come up. And so that can be if you're dining with them, just asking if you can say a prayer for the table. That can be when they are going through hardship, asking if you can pray with them and for them, and just be asking them to come to church with you. A lot of it's just asking to be there for them, empathizing with them, praying for them, putting their name in your Bible and praying for them to have a softened heart, praying for God to soften their heart, and eventually having them come to you and ask. And then at that point, having the resources, either the biblical knowledge or the people in your life that you can connect them with or such to help them learn more about the gospel. I think realistically what I've seen is I know people who have tried to force people, meaning like you have to do Bible studies with us if you want to see your grandkids, or you have to do this. I know people who have tried to force people to learn about the gospel, and that just never works. And so I think most of it comes in being there for people, empathizing, asking. This is something that's more newer realized for me, by the way. I was always the guy who would try to be a little more upfront with this. Being someone who lives a life that people can tell is a Christian life, being there for people when they need it, praying for them, being there for them, empathizing with them. Christ cried with others. And then when the time comes and they ask about it, or when the opportunity arises, being inviteful, and inviting them to do a study with you, or inviting them to come to church with you, or a small group. There are a lot of ways to do it. But the first key part that most people, including myself, fall victim to is living a life that is Christ-like, so that you can, without being hypocritical, say, come to church with me. You can't go and get absolutely smacked on a Saturday night with your friends and then ask if they want to go to church on Sunday morning. It just doesn't really coexist. What is your interpretation of Luke 16:8? I want to do something fancy for this one. What is your interpretation of Luke 16:8?
What's up, dude?
Mr. Joey, can I put you on a hot seat for a second?
Sure.
Cool. I'm currently on camera doing a Q&A for YouTube. And one of the questions I got was, what is my interpretation of Luke 16:8? To be honest with you, this one's a little bit above my comfort zone. Are you comfortable sharing on a phone call out on the hot seat? Let's go.
Let me pull it up.
I already talked about you earlier in this video as being someone who's a very big role model for me. So not like I set a high expectation of you or anything.
Yeah, seriously, no pressure.
No pressure in the slightest. Luke 16:8.
The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. The sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. Well, this is in the context of a teaching, a parable about, I believe it's about, a servant who uses cunning ways to spare himself of his master's wrath. That's verses 1-7 or something like that. And then verse 8, Jesus makes the point that if the world, those who are far from God, are cunning for their own sake and for their own benefit, why can't Christians, the sons of light, redeem the idea of being cunning or innovative or ambitious for the kingdom of God? So, why can't we use money not as a tool for our own sake, but as a tool for bringing more people to heaven? That's why verse 9 says, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, meaning use everyday money, so that when it fails, when it is no longer good, they may receive you into eternal dwellings. That's my daughter. He's saying use whatever assets and resources you have to bring as many people into heaven as you can. That way, when you go into heaven, they're going to welcome you in.
So almost in alignment with put your money bags in heaven, in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure your treasures are in heaven. Use your earthly treasures to store up treasures in heaven.
Cool. I love that, bro. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll see you.
Chat soon. Bye, bro. I don't think I could have said it even half as good as that. So, number one, Joey, Citizens Annapolis, YouTube. He is one of the most theologically knowledgeable guys I've ever found. He's also one of the most logical guys in talking about Christianity that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. He's really the guy. One of the questions up here is, what's your testimony? He's a large part of it. In a few words, how would you describe what you do for a living? I sit down in front of a camera. I make YouTube videos. People find those YouTube videos and see that I know about business, and people who have businesses that watch these videos ask for my help on helping them grow their own businesses, whether that's through consulting or coaching or done for you stuff that I have with agencies. Business owners find me through YouTube videos and then ask for me to help them grow their businesses because I've grown a lot of businesses. Next question. I don't want to start an agency, but I want to make money. What's your advice? My advice is to ask better questions. At this point, this deep in, I think we're an hour or something in, my patience for bad questions goes down. And so there's the saying, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I disagree. There is such thing as a stupid question, because a stupid question is a question that doesn't really have any thought inside of it. And so to say that you want to start one business model, you don't want to start one business model, but you want to make money. There's no advice to be given there. Why do you want to make money? How do you want to make money? There's 1,000 different ways to make money. There's a lot of different questions to rebut on this, but I think it just shows a lack of really understanding anything about the agency space or making money. How to master public speaking. Do a lot more of it. That's the easiest way of wording this. Realistically, anything you want to get better at, just do a lot more of it. And you can watch and learn little principles and tactics and such, but just do more speaking. I said at the beginning of this, I want to get better better at doing raw sit downs in front of camera. And the way I'm going to do that is by doing more of it. It's uncomfortable and it's almost always going to be bad at first, but do more of it. How do I align my business to God's will? I think that is a conversation that you and God should have. I think you should sit down on that and pray to that and ask God where he can intervene in your business. How do you want me to use my business to grow your kingdom? Where do you want me to change my business? And I would ask yourself, like, how do you even make God present inside of your business? Are you reading any kind of scripture on team meetings? Are you praying on any team meetings? Are you on certain decisions doing things after asking and consulting God on those things? Realistically, a lot of people say that they want to do things for God's kingdom and then they don't actually act that out in how they go about their everyday lives. I'm not saying that you don't. It's obviously a question that, I don't even know who wrote this, but that's what I would ask. What's your testimony? I would love to answer that, but we are short on time. And I think that's a really powerful question or powerful answer, because my testimony, I think, is something that a lot of people would learn from, including myself. And so I want to share that in its own video. Do you still think that a marketing agency is the best way to get started with no investment? I think there are only two models I'd recommend if you're starting a business. Both are very different. Number one is cash flow model. Number two is like a learning model. Cash flow model would be coaching. I think that there's no better way to make money right now than having some kind of coaching or consulting offer, whether it's B2B, B2C. There's so many different ways this is what I talked about earlier with having some kind of content that is based on authority. You can create content if you're a coach because you're coaching on something that you ideally have authority on, whether that's losing weight, gaining muscle, how to run a marathon, all fitness examples. If it's business, how to start a business that can do $10,000 a month online. If it's business to business, then you have so many different niches inside of business, how to grow a sales team, how to hire sales reps, how to run Facebook ads. There's so many different little niches inside of business that you can do any kind of coaching on. If you have any experience in those, so many different things in the personal world, like I talked about earlier, software developers. What are you doing for work right now? What have you done well? Do you know how to solve a Rubik's Cube in 30 seconds? You can create a coaching program on that. Side note, I solved a Rubik's Cube in 18 seconds. I still can solve Rubik's Cubes, but that was my best time ever. But you can create a coaching program on that. You could create a coaching program on just how to dress better. There's so many good companies to help you learn how to start agencies. I really recommend you look at them, and I really recommend that you start with something there. Same with coaching. Trey Cockrum is a very good friend of mine, has a really good business on teaching people how to learn how to start coaching businesses that can get them to $5,000, $10,000 a month. I have no kickback for any of those. I have no affiliate link. You're not going to see links down below, but those are people in coaching companies that I'd recommend if you're first learning. I do want to state though that there's always investment with starting a business, whether again, it's time or money. The game becomes being as efficient with both as possible. That is it for today. I want to make this a weekly thing. So what we'll do is if you have questions, if you want to have a question answered, comment down below what your question is. It doesn't matter if it's personal, faith, business, etc. Drop it down below. We'll probably start doing these every Thursday so that they can come out every Friday, in time making them even more and more and more raw. Maybe one day we'll just do a full uncut one. Until next time, love you guys much. Happy hunting.